tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello to everyone out there in the Tampa Bay area and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports Podcast. I'm here today with Carlos to discuss all things Rowdies. Carlos, how are you doing on this lovely Monday?
James, I'm doing great. It's Monday, August 1st. It's a new month. The sun is shining too much. It's a little too hot. The birds are chirping. It's a great day. It's a great day. It's always nice to start a new month. Feels like turning a page. And yeah, but no matter what month it is, it seems like the Rowdies just keep on chugging along. Another win, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it's been a great week and just excited to talk about Rowdies, James.
Yeah, me too. On Saturday night, the Rowdies beat Indy 11 3-1 away from home in Indianapolis. So that's obviously a pretty good place to start. I will get 1 point in our personal standings for having guessed that we would win. Carlos, you take all 3 points for your prediction. You guessed a 3-1 win, and that is what we got.
Yep. No, I felt like, I don't know if you guys saw my tweet. I put out a picture I put together. It was a meme I made like a year ago, and it's like some Greek philosopher like painted in green and gold. I just felt like the biggest mind on the planet after I think that might be the first actual score prediction I got right this season. So yeah, happy to win, but even happier to get that score right, James.
Well, it is in our personal standings, it is 15 points to me and 10 points to you. So you're catching up, and I've had a bit of a head start. Not looking too good for me, but we are going to have to move past that and just get in some more predictions before this episode is out. The Rowdies will play at home this week versus Detroit City, so we will preview that, and that's where you will get our new predicts for the upcoming week. And before we move on, please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can do that at RBLR Sports, and please like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. You will find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, I will go through the quick recap here, and then Carlos, I'll turn it over to you. And we can get started on those questions here. So our quick recap starts, as always, with the 11 who took the field. That was CJ Cochran, Lawrence White, Jordan Scarlett, Aaron Guillen in the back, Sebastian Dalgard, Lewis Hilton, Nicky Law, and Jake Arman in the midfield, Sebastian Guenzotti, Steven Dos Santos, and Jake LaCava all up top. Now, Jake Arman did have to come off early due to an injury. And right after that, we gave up a goal. So not the best start, you would say, to the game. That happened a little after the 20th minute. However, before halftime, we had equalized and then taken the lead through a penalty and then a corner kick. So not too bad in that end anyway. After the second half, with many subs and a lot of lesser play, I would say, than the first half. It wasn't quite the same game then. But the Rowdies scored on another penalty very late in the game through Leo Fernandez, who takes his tally up another in this season. And I believe he's at 12. I will double check my statistics for that. But yeah, it turned out to be a pretty good game.
Oh, it was a great game. It was definitely a great game. Kept me on my heels for sure. Definitely a little bit worried to start the half, I'll be honest. I mean, we're on this unbeaten streak now of just, I forget how many games. It's just been crazy, but we're playing really well, and Twitter told me to calm down after I realized that we have like the most points in the league after conceding first, which makes sense. It feels like that's happened every other game. So yeah, I mean, obviously settled into the game pretty well and eventually got the win, like you said, James. But let's jump into some of the questions and get into some of the analysis here, because it was an interesting game. Like we said, we conceded first. It's just, I mean, again, we rallied back, but again, it could have been this kind of lingering theme of the slow start. So I'm going to pose this question to you, James. Like you said, Indy opened the scoring in, I believe it was the 23rd minute. It was Aguilera who put in a nice finish with his head off a just dime of a cross. He kind of got lost between Wyke and Scarlett, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely a frustrating goal, kind of lapsed of judgment for 1 second. Would you consider this kind of like a slow start from us again, or did Indy just kind of get a random chance here that ended up being in the back of the net?
I think that Indy were definitely. I think that they were posing this threat all along, so to speak. They probably, well, the Rowdies are definitely going to be upset to have given up that goal, and you could see that from CJ Cochran's reaction. I think that he
Yeah.
got the ball and punted it out immediately. But what I saw from Indy 11, when we had the ball in possession, we would usually play with something close to a 4-4-2. And then when Jake Arman had to go off, Aaron Guillen stepped into the left back spot, and we continued that way. So when we were out of possession and Indy had it, we would be more in a 3-5-2. And the thing that I was seeing from Indy, they weren't really using a lot of their midfield. Tell me if you noticed this as well. It would be in the back line with Mishak Jerome a lot, one of Indy's center backs, and he would play it straight from his spot on the back up to their forwards and try to build the ball up from there. They were really, glossing over their midfield, so to speak, and then trying to build it up from there. And the goal kind of went that way too. It went along some frustrating lines. If you're a Rowdies defender, that much I will say. It was definitely. Well, it broke for Juan Tejada, so that's frustrating in and of itself. But when it did land at his feet after they had bypassed the midfield, like I was talking about, he went and carried it all the way across the field pretty much.
Yeah.
He didn't beat a ton of players, but he had a lot of space to run into. So I was kind of worried about what exactly was going on there. He carried it across the field and he found Solomon Asante. Solomon Asante then laid it off to the right wing, or the right fullback, I should say, Jared Timmer. Jared Timmer put in a cross, and it just went right over Jordan Scarlett's head. And it was Raul Aguilera, an Orlando City Academy product, who headed it home. So I guess that's kind of double trouble for us Rowdies fans. But what I saw in this goal specifically was, those two midfielders that Indy had. Alexander McQueen was one of them, and I believe the other was Naveal Hackshaw, if I'm not mistaken. And they were the two players who normally would be involved in the build-up for Indy if they were going to do that. But like I said, they were mostly skipping over the midfielders and playing it straight to their strikers, including Raul Aguilera and Juan Tejada and a couple of other players up top. And then they would... it seemed like Lewis Hilton and Nicky Law, the two central midfielders that we had when we were out of possession, they would step up to those two midfielders who were on Indy's team, Naveal Hackshaw and Alexander McQueen. And then it would be up to our defenders to be there to break up any passes that were sent into Indy's attacking unit. And we did an okay job of that. I think that we also failed quite a few times. There were, some moments where I saw we tried to step in and win the ball before their forward could, or, we just were a little overzealous in our defending, and we were trying to get to one side of the player so that we could get the ball. And then, the next thing is they've turned and they're going the other way with it. So this was one of those instances where it fell to Juan Tejada. He took it across the field, and that is the way that they scored the goal. So I'm not saying that the Rowdies were, I'm not necessarily saying that it was a slow start. I don't think that, almost 30 minutes into the game, I feel like you can't even talk about whether or not it was the starting point, so to speak. But I will say that there were some problems that we did not exactly correct for immediately. And unfortunately, Indy did capitalize on that.
Yeah. I think I've talked about this in the past with some of like the lower table teams we've played these past couple of weeks, like Atlanta and Loudoun. What they've been able to rely on with some success, obviously we beat them in both situations pretty comfortably. What their plan of attack was just to kind of throw the ball to their forwards and hopefully somebody does something with it. And I think we were able to defend that pretty easily because like that's really all they had, and there wasn't a ton of just cohesiveness. They were kind of relying on individual talent in those games. Whereas for a team like Indy, again, not necessarily the best team in the league right now, definitely looking for their identity, definitely looking for something. They're definitely a team that, has some more talent, has a little more cohesiveness. So even though it felt like sometimes what they were doing was just kind of an Atlanta or a Loudon strategy against us, where they would just send the ball up, like you said, kind of skip the midfield. They have, I think, that little extra talent for sure that kind of pushed them over the edge to be able to score more on us, to be able to create more chances from those long balls. And I'm thinking about, I think it was right before the end of the half, it was McQueen who kind of had that random breakaway chance. That chance was something that, CJ Cochran had to make a great save on that. It felt like something that shouldn't have happened because it was like 4 or 5 on 2 basically. And somehow the ball got like right through our 2 defenders who I'm forgetting, but it just felt like the shape of our back line and our defensive midfielders there for it. Like we kept getting caught in transition a couple times. And I think that is definitely, I don't want to say it'll be an issue necessarily because it hasn't really been an issue. It's kind of like a one-time thing so far. And against teams like Louisville and Detroit, who will be playing in the next couple of weeks, it's not the same style of play, so I'm not really expecting that to be an issue. But it just felt like we kept getting caught in transition, like you said. So I don't know. I think it's possible that Jake Armin's injury could have played a role in that, kind of a random switch up like early on into the game. Obviously, Jake Armin is a good piece defensively, but then again, Connor Antley came in to replace him, and Connor Antley was the League One Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago. So it's not like we were, dropping off defensively with that sub or anything. Do you think that Armin injury had anything to do with it?
I don't know if necessarily the Armin injury like itself. What I was thinking over the course of the first 20 minutes, let's say the first 25 minutes of the first half versus the second portion of that half, the last 20 minutes. I just think that, the Rowdies were lined up slightly differently with Jake Armin as opposed to Aaron Guillen at the left back spot. Aaron Guillen is certainly somebody who likes to get forward when he can. And, I don't think that he is, well, let me say, I don't think he's quite as good as Jake Armin at that aspect of the game. Not that he's bad at it. He's actually very good at it. But I would just say more so is that Jake Armin is closer to an elite player at getting forward at the USL Championship level.
Yeah.
Aaron Guillen is definitely more solid defensively. Like there are pros and cons to each. But Aaron Guillen still has a very good ability to get forward. What I was really seeing when he went off, though, Jake Armin, that is that Aaron Guillen actually started to push forward a lot when he was moved into the left back spot. I think that was, a big mandate for that position. When we had possession, again, it was a 4-4-2 kind of setup, and Lawrence White would be a right back with Sebastian Dalgard as a right winger as opposed to a right wing back. And then Jordan Scarlett, and in the second part of the first half, it was Connor Antley who was his center back partner, so to speak, and Aaron Guillen was the left back. But I think that Jake Armin would have been better just as the ability to cover both sides and keep possession not keep possession, but win back possession when we are out of it. Aaron Guillen, though, was still very good at his role, and I liked what he did. The one thing that I noticed especially beforehand, and this actually doesn't relate to Armin or Guillen, but Sebastian Dalgard was not really very involved in the first 30 minutes of that first half. And I think that played a role too, because when we had our 4-4-2 in possession, Lewis Hilton and Nicky Law were kind of playing as a double pivot. I don't know if this is something that you agree with as well, but it looked to me as though they were playing as a double pivot, and we weren't really getting the same, side to side switching of possession that Lewis Hilton is so well known for. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like Nicky Law was mostly sticking to the left side, helping out Aaron Guillen and Jake LaCava in the attack, and that Lewis Hilton was mostly sticking to the right side, helping out Lawrence White and Sebastian Dalgard in the attack. And, obviously it would change a little bit, and players would move around positions, but that was mostly the way that it went. And I don't know if there was just less fluidity in switching things up between those two sides that might have helped us out more and gotten Sebastian Dalgard more involved.
it was definitely an abrupt change too. I mean, it's not really something you ever plan on doing so early on, like 23 minutes in, adjusting the game plan. Because Armin and Antley again, and you know, they're different players, so you have to adjust accordingly. And like you said, it affected how, or not necessarily how, but what style Guillen was playing. He's pushing up a little bit more. Um, Maybe that had to do with because Guillen is partially at fault for the goal we conceded. He was a little too slow getting out to the Indy player that crossed the ball to Aguilera.
Right.
I'm forgetting what his name is, but
Jared Timmer was the right back that we unfortunately did not cover.
yeah, and you look back at the game and some of the replays, and Aaron Guillen just leaving him with way too much space. To be honest, there was maybe a couple steps too slow to get out there, and you know, there was only one person in the box. Maybe he was a little comfortable with our coverage back there, and with good reason because we had Wyke and Scarlett on him, and but again, it was just a perfect cross, right on Aguilera's forehead. Those are the goals that are so frustrating because it seems like that just shouldn't be happening. I mean, especially when he's covered by two guys in the box, but like I said, I mean, Guillen, maybe his pushing up and he's slow to return back to his position, and that affected how quickly or slowly he was able to get out to his guy there. But either way, I mean, those are the things I've talked about in the past that have been kind of haunting us on and off, is this quick lapse in judgment. It's not necessarily like our guys are playing bad, because they're not. I mean, we've undefeated for like 12 games now. Like, our back line is doing well. They're doing something right. But we've had instances like this where, we don't get the clean sheet because of a silly little lapse in judgment. We're not quick to the ball when we should be, or just, mispositioning on the way back and getting caught out in transition. Those are the things we're going to need to be careful with going forward. And I wouldn't say I'm worried about that, but it's just something to keep an eye on, especially because, like I've said, I think it was last week's episode, our opponents in these past couple of weeks have been kind of like teams that are on the lower end of the table. But the schedule is going to start to ramp up here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So hopefully we kind of adjust accordingly, but we'll have to see how it plays out against some of these top table teams coming up soon.
Yeah, and if I can build slightly off of what you were talking about there with those lapses of judgment, just take 2 quick seconds here. Jordan Scarlett did not really impress me on the defensive side of this game. He did well. I shouldn't say it that way. It was 50-50. Let's say that he had, obviously several good moments, and he recovered actually one possession that he lost terribly, where he was just, caught with the ball at his feet, and he tracked back and won that. But yeah, this one was definitely a lapse, and it was literally just, you've lost your man. He was in between Jordan Scarlett and I think it was Lawrence Wyke, and Raul Aguilera just found just exactly the space that he needed to score. So I did not exactly like that aspect of it. And there was another time that I saw that Jordan Scarlett lost possession very cheaply. I think that, that one didn't come back to bite us, obviously, because they did not score. But it was, if I'm not mistaken, that one at least led to a foul or something along those lines. So yeah, it wasn't my favorite in those terms, and certainly a couple little lapses that need to be cut out if somebody like Jordan Scarlett wants to get back up to the same heights that he was at when he was making USL all league teams and something like that. But anyway, let's move on from that one, because there are a lot of good things to talk about in this game, and we don't want to focus on anything negative here. So a question that I had for you, Carlos, something that I wanted to bring up that you also wrote down here for us to talk about. Nicky Law and Lewis Hilton seem to be in control of the midfield, and with ease at a lot of times. I had talked about earlier how Indy 11 essentially were bypassing their own midfielders and possibly to avoid Nicky Law and Lewis Hilton and, their abilities there. What did you think of those two playing there? Could this be a duo that we see regularly going forward?
I absolutely love this duo so far. I mean, Nicky Law has I'll admit, like I was skeptical when we traded him. When we traded Juan Tejada and brought in Nicky Law, and this is a guy who his resume speaks for itself, obviously. But he's an older player. He's a veteran of the game. Um, and personally, when I saw that, I guess I was a little skeptical that he would even get much playing time. I kind of saw him maybe as like, he's coming here to kind of start his retirement, coming down to Florida. I mean, not really a better place to be if you want to start your retirement. I figured he'd just be kind of like a veteran locker room presence. But Neil Collins' willingness to play him and, obviously play him as a starter in this game has really surprised me and definitely impressed me here. And, I think it makes sense because these sort of center mid positions where he and Lewis Hilton are playing, kind of controlling the middle of the field, those are some of that's probably the most important position to have somebody who can control the game, somebody who's a veteran. It makes sense because, you go down 1-0. You don't want the guy that's pushing the ball up the field and distributing the ball. I mean, you want them to stay calm. You need them to distribute the ball well. You need them to be level-headed. And that's what Law and Hilton have seemed to bring together this game. I think they did it really well. I mean, it's stuff that, like the commentator said, stuff that won't show up on the on the stats necessarily. But Lewis Hilton, he was one of the people I shouted out on Twitter after the game, and he just had a great game too. These guys seem to just really keep the level head. And the effort they show is just very impressive. So I think it's a great combo to have. And I think it's something that we definitely could see going forward. I just didn't think it would be something that I would seeing Nicky Law playing as a starter, especially. But I think they were a huge part of our response to going down 1-0 because, like I said, they kept the level head. And eventually, Lewis Hilton and Nicky Law were both involved on the play that started or that ended with Steven Dos Santos drawing the penalty to put us to even the game at 1. So I can't say enough good things about this pair, and I do hope that Neil Collins gives them some time to gel and maybe continue to be a powerful duo in these upcoming games. I think they could grow and build some serious chemistry here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they both have not just the ability to play in that field, but I think that the two of them have a very good soccer IQ, is what I guess a lot of commentators call it. Lewis Hilton has proven to Rowdies fans, time and time again, that he is one of the smartest guys on the field, and he can pick a pass. He can choose the right moments to get stuck in, and he'll win a lot of tackles that are the kinds of things where we need to stop not only the other team from coming at us, but then he can win that tackle and turn around and put the Rowdies in a good position to then move forward into our own attack. You see that so many times a game. And then when Nicky Law comes in, and it's kind of like, minus the hairdo, you're seeing double out there. I really like that. But I think that he is and this, probably comes from experience, if not just what he was like as a player beforehand. But yeah, he has exactly that same soccer IQ, and he's ready to compete at the level of, a Rowdies team that's going on to try to challenge for championships and stuff like that. I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But it's looking good, I would say, in our midfield.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the things that I was worried about, like I said, when he came in, or Nicky Law specifically, was that, like I said, his age, and at the USL championship level, this is a league with a lot of speed. It seems like a lot of the games just kind of rely on a crazy breakaway opportunity or, serious attacking and rapid play down the wing. Obviously, Nicky Law is kind of in the center, in the middle. And just one of the things I wanted to note here was that this game and the last game too, when he debuted for us, there's been multiple moments where he's not a fast guy necessarily, but he knows when to turn it up a little bit. the other team, our opponent will have a moment in transition. And there was a couple times this game where he just kind of stole it from behind. He would just stick his foot in, and all of a sudden, like, we have the ball again. It's not something I expected again, but Nicky Law seems to kind of complement Lewis Hilton's, I guess, like you said, moments of getting stuck in. Nicky Law seems to know how to do that too, and I think it's going to be a great pair. So just one of the things I was impressed about, on top of his level-headedness and distribution skills.
Yeah, absolutely, and something that's very good to point out. Moving on to the second half here, I think that, with the first half playing out as it did, the Rowdies were more than content to kind of sit back and, absorb the pressure, see if they can break when they can. It didn't really work out in a lot of instances. I think that there was a lot more in the second half that were, individual plays. If we ever got close to net, especially when Leo Fernandez came on, he was involved in that. And Jake LaCava was also heavily involved in any of those, semi chances that we got in the second half. But we did ultimately get a goal from another late penalty. And we'll talk about the penalties in a bit here. But how did you feel about our response in the second half? Were you okay? Were you comfortable with that and how we sat on the lead?
I was never comfortable this game, like, to be honest. Like I said, I mean, it seemed like we talked about this earlier. It seemed like we were getting caught in transition more often than we should have been. And every time Indy touched the ball and they started to move quickly, and Tejada would get on the ball with his speed, like, and his, flowing hair behind him, like, it felt like they always had a dangerous opportunity. It never, like, it didn't always work out that way. They didn't always end up with a shot on target. Maybe they didn't even end up with a shot at all. We seemed to stop them, most of the time, obviously, because we only let in one goal. But every time they got the ball and they're moving with pace, they're moving with speed down the field, there was the potential for a dangerous chance. So I wasn't necessarily comfortable, like, in some of these past games where, we're playing a team that's not too good. Indy had the potential to tie the game at any moment with a crazy counterattack. They have talented players. Obviously, we know about Tejada, but, Asante in transition, and we know about his talent, and, his time in Phoenix and his goals over there were just, incredible in that, like, crazy season that Phoenix had. I mean, they had a lot of talent, so it was never a moment where I was like, okay, like, we're going to win. Like, so I was a little worried and wishing that we would kind of press for the goal a little bit more. I can only recall, like, a couple of chances that we created in the second half. It felt like most of the game was kind of played with us either kind of holding the ball, not really finding much space to score, or defending in transition against Indy. The only, like, really clear-cut chance I can, remember in the second half is that Guanzati header that went inches wide. He was right in front of the goal. He was wide open. I forgot who crossed. It might have been Dahlgaard who crossed that ball in, if I'm not mistaken. But Guanzati heads the ball just wide, and then he gets subbed off for Leo Fernandez, and Kyle Gregg would come in for Steven Dos Santos. Kyle Gregg did have one more chance, actually, that I can think of, when he definitely was in goal-scoring opportunity. I mean, he was in the box. It seemed
Another
like
one he should have put away.
Exactly. It seems like he was just kind of waiting too long to pull the trigger, and eventually had to force a shot that went over the bar. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think those are the only two, like, quote unquote dangerous chances we had in the second half, apart from the penalty. So I was never super comfortable, long story short. And either one of those chances would have kind of changed the dynamic of the game and kind of started to put the nail in the coffin. But, obviously Guanzati's having his goal scoring woes and, struggling to find the back of the net. And Kyle Gregg, kind of the same thing, just can't really seem to find the back of the net when it's there. So it was definitely uncomfortable. But again, we played all right. We didn't create or give up too many chances for Indy, and at the end of the day, we won. So I can't complain. But I just don't think that performance or maybe that energy will hold up in upcoming games.
Yeah, the only other chance that I remember was there was another Steven Dos Santos header that was totally free in the box. It was very similar actually to Sebastian Guenzati's, but he also put it wide. And I remember him standing there with his head in his hands after that. Like, I cannot believe I missed that. And
Sure.
sitting at home, I guess I kind of felt the same, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's not like I would have gotten on the end of that if I were in the game. So let's move on then to how we did score in this game. We got 2 penalties, actually. 2 penalties that I don't know the last time that the Rowdies did that, but we've actually been earning a lot of penalties in these last couple of games, and I feel like that has that has really bumped up Leo Fernandez's goal scoring. Not that he hasn't scored several good goals, outside of penalty chances, of course, but he's sitting on 12 now. I did confirm that, and several of those, especially recently, like I said, were from this penalty spot. So let's start with this game. And, after having so many in the early part of the season that we thought were penalties and that we did not get, maybe it's just a little bit of luck that is going our way with the referees in this part of the season. But did you think these 2 were penalties, Carlos? I'm not sure that I was on board with both of them entirely.
I would say the second penalty, like while the game was going, and they stopped the game and the commentators like penalty, I agreed. I was like, wait, what? I didn't really see a moment where that would have been a penalty in live action, but on the replay, I felt like the second penalty to close out the game, which at that point I don't think would have influenced the outcome. I think that was more of a penalty than the Steven Dos Santos penalty early on. I don't know. I felt like the Sean Lewis didn't really touch Dos Santos too much to warrant a penalty. But then again, I mean, you're just going to get some referees that see the contact, and for some referees it'll be a foul, and for some it won't. That's just the nature of the game. I'm sure in other instances, that wouldn't have been a penalty, but and same thing with the Kyle Gregg foul and the penalty at the end of the game. I think some referees just wouldn't blow it based on the fact that it's in stoppage time. There's a lot of like extra psychological and situational factors that I think play into when a referee doesn't call a penalty or when he does call a penalty. So I don't know. I think the second one was more of a foul, so I'll take it. And I'm not going to complain about a penalty call for sure. I think by the time that Steven Dos Santos got that penalty early on, it felt like we deserved it based on kind of where we were situationally. We were pushing up, we were creating some chances. So again, like I'm happy with the penalty calls. Like keep them coming for all I care. I don't really care, but I think it does say something about kind of the style of play we play too. Like you said, we're getting more penalties recently, and if you look at the stats here, let me pull it up real quick. We had 12 shots in the box this game. Indy 11 had 1 shot in the box this game. So, and if you look back at the last game, it was something crazy like 24 shots, and I think like 20, something crazy of them, like a crazy amount was in the box. We're a team that doesn't really rip it from outside the 18. We'd like to get the ball into the box, lots of crosses, lots of interplay in the center, and 1-2 passing between Jake LaCava and Leo Fernandez, and occasionally Steven Dos Santos. I think that this kind of increase in penalties, and you look at the stats and how many shots we've had in the box, I think it says a lot about how effective we are at getting into the box.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not finishing. No, not maybe. We aren't finishing a lot of the chances that we create, but we're creating really dangerous opportunities from like 8 yards away, 10 yards away, 6 yards away, like right in front of the box or right in front of the goal. And no matter how many missed opportunities you have, if you keep creating those chances and you have 12 shots in the box, like that's why you're going to score 3 goals in a game, no matter whether 2 of them are penalty or not. Like, the goals are going to come if you get into that space. And I think we're doing a really, really good job of that. So, penalties aside, I think it's a testament to how well we're doing when it comes to kind of penetrating the other team's back line and getting into the danger zone there in front of goal.
I think that is a very good point. And as you said, I will not complain when we are given penalties. I think when Leo and I were discussing the games, especially in that tough month of April, there were lots that kind of hinged on, one goal or something like that, one moment in the game, and then we had what we thought were pretty obvious penalties not given. So maybe this is just the universe correcting for itself. And as I said, I will take that all day and not complain. So let's
just
move on.
A quick note real quick before we move on. I just looked back, and against Atlanta last week, we had 20 shots in the box. Against Loudoun, we had 14. So these are numbers that are like by no means normal. Most teams aren't getting anywhere close to that. And so again, we're getting penalties, and definitely a little bit is luck, but I'm really impressed by how we're getting those penalties, how often we're getting into the danger zone there. And it's just not something other teams are doing to the same level. And, that is going to be what, if we have a championship season this year, I think that's going to be what carries us there, is continuously getting to the box there and creating those chances.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely. So now, with all of that said, let's do our last question here before we talk about man of the match and who we choose for this game versus Indy. But CJ Cochran had another great game, and I'm wondering for you, Carlos, is he settled in sync with the back line now? Are we getting, comfortable with the chemistry that he's being able to build with our defense?
Yeah, I don't think we're at that Evan Lauro back line level yet, because that was just crazy. Like that shutout streak they had. But we're definitely getting there. It's a process. I mean, it's really tough bringing in a new goalie, and early on in the season we're rotating goalies. We don't know who the starter is, and even up to now we're kind of constantly changing the back line depending on injuries, depending on the situation, depending on the game. It's tough, and CJ Cochran does a tough job. And apart from just having to save the shots, I mean, he's got to have good communication with his back line. And I think he's starting to do that. And I think he started to do that a while ago. I'm not saying he's just starting now, but I think you're starting to see the fruit of that labor. And I feel like every game there's a potential for a shutout, and we always have like one little, like I said, lapse in judgment or something. We haven't had a shutout since the Memphis game at home back on July 2nd. We're letting some lower table teams score on us, but then again, the offense is putting up 3-4 goals a game, so it works out eventually. But but yeah, I like I said, I think CJ Cochran's getting there, and obviously he's a super talented goalie individually. The commentators, I think, made a great point of saying that the Rowdies don't ask him to make a ton of saves, but they ask him to make the important ones, and he did in this game. Like I said, that chance they had right before the half was essentially a one-on-one opportunity, and with one hand held out strong, he parried the ball away and kept the score at 2-1. So CJ Cochran's doing obviously super well individually, and I think more importantly though is the fact that he's starting to gel more with his back line, and I really, really hope that starts to result in a few more shutouts. Maybe kind of get back to that level where we were last year, because if we have this offense firing on all cylinders like it is right now, and the defense start to step up a little bit more, like, I don't know, the sky's the limit with this team.
Yeah, absolutely. We are seeing how that can bear out with the last record over the course of the month of July. So now, with all of that being said, let us do our man of the match. And Carlos, I will let you go first. Who was your man of the match for this game against Indy?
So this is a tough game for me to choose a man of the match, because we had 3 goal scorers, but 2 of them were penalties. One of them was a defender. Jordan Scarlett scored off a random opportunity. So for the first time in a little while, I'm not going to choose a goal scorer. I'm going to take Lewis Hilton in the midfield. I think Lewis Hilton had the best game out of any player overall on the field. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, he was just so in sync in the midfield with everybody else. He knew when and where to distribute the ball. He kept the level head with Nicky Law when we went down 1-0, and made sure to keep making the right passes. He's not somebody that gets super frustrated or anything, or at least it doesn't let him, that doesn't affect how he plays. And he was involved in at least 2 of the goals. I think a little more directly. And when he crossed the ball to Steven Dos Santos, who it was a perfect cross, and Steven Dos Santos just did his job and parried the ball or directed the ball towards the net, but Sean Lewis made a crazy save, and that's when Jordan Scarlett came in and finished on that really tough angle. So credit to Jordan Scarlett too. I mean, that's a tough goal to finish, but Lewis Hilton was the catalyst for that, and he was part of the catalyst for the first penalty. And I mean, the commentators, I think, were the most impressed with Lewis Hilton that game out of anybody in the stadium, because they kept mentioning how he just keeps following the ball. He's like the ball's like a magnet, and he's just chasing it down. I don't know, it's crazy. The game was pretty much done, and he was still running full speed out there. And I think that effort translates to good results and good performances too. Of just apart from his raw talent, I mean, this is a guy that really, really controlled the midfield, and I think he's deserved more man of the match honors. It's just hard to give them to him when Leo Fernandez and Jake LaCava seem to be taking them all up with their like 5 million goals a game. So I'm gonna take Lewis Hilton, and yeah, I think he's the best player on the field by far.
Well, Carlos, we did not collaborate on this, but somehow we came up with the same answer. I was also going to choose Lewis Hilton as my man of the match all along. So
nice.
I had a whole little spiel about it, but you kind of covered everything, so I'm going to leave it there. Lewis Hilton was my man of the match as well, and somehow we get an RBLR unanimous pick here for
Deserved.
Man of the Match.
Well deserved.
Absolutely. He passed the eye test in addition to everything else that you had just laid out for us. So that will do it for our questions and analysis, and we need to get going into the standings. But before we do that, I would just like to say that liking and subscribing is free to our podcast. But if you need some new threads this year, possibly you might want to support our podcast just a little bit more. How can you do that? Well, if you head over to shop.rblrsports.com, you can check out all of the designs that we've got going on over there. There will be a link in the description, and I talk this up every week, but I have got one of these as a gift before, and it is a very popular gift, so please do that. You can use the promo code COYR for 10% off all of those designs from our producer, Eureka. He does not just do the Rowdies, folks. He also covers the Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, and the Tampa Bay Bandits. So you can find stuff related to RBLR and all of those teams if you go there. Please, again, go check it out. Now, let's do the standings, and then, Carlos, I will turn it over to you to preview our home game versus Detroit City. The Eastern Conference right now, Louisville City have officially made their best ever start with 46 points from 21 games. We do, however, sit right behind them with 45 points from 22 games played. So we just got to keep it going and make sure that if they slip up, we're right there to catch them and move ahead. Next in the Eastern Conference comes Pittsburgh on 40 from 22 games played, followed by Memphis on 39, Birmingham with 38, Detroit City with 35, and the Miami with 31 points. So all of those are nipping at our heels. We got to make sure that we don't let them catch us either. Over in the West, you will see in the top San Antonio. They actually lead the league as well with 50 points from 21 games played, and there is a much larger gap behind them. And the second place team there, San Diego, have 43 points from 22 games played. The rest of the playoff positions in the West are Colorado Springs, New Mexico, Sac Republic, El Paso, and Las Vegas. They have 40 points, 38 points, 33 points, 33 points, and 32 points, respectively. So that is the standings picture as it is.
The standings are always interesting to look at this point in the week. The games are wrapping up from the past week, and it's always a little frustrating to see Louisville continuously just winning every game. So
I know.
eventually they will slip up, and we have a shot at them in a couple of weeks, which I'm pretty confident about. But we'll get into that next week for sure. More importantly, this week, to keep pace with Louisville, we have a tough game at home against Detroit City, one of the newest, if not the newest, USL teams, and an opponent that we have never played before. So definitely exciting always to play a new team. And again, Detroit's a team that has been established, though, for a while, and they have a great fan base, obviously very well known throughout the U.S. For their atmosphere. Definitely a game I'd like to get up to at some point in Detroit. But apart from that, they are also very, very dangerous on the field. They seem to be kind of outperforming expectations, like you mentioned on the table. They're in sixth place. Earlier on, they were in like third place. They're kind of bouncing around. This is definitely a really, really good team. So in their last 5 games, they've won 2 games away, and they've had 3 draws, including in 2 home games. Detroit definitely has some flexibility in their system, I would say. They often play in a 3-4-3 type setup. And then with regards to some players to watch here, I think one of the players I'm most excited to see return here to Owling is Antoine Hopino, former Rowdy, somebody I really like to watch play, but somebody that I will always remember for his reaction when he played for Louisville last year. Was it? No, it's 2 years ago in Louisville. That meme kind of has gone around Rowdy's Twitter for some time now. Poor guy. He was on the field and they zoomed in on him, and I felt really bad as a former Rowdy. But anyway, we're happy to see him come back. And they also have other really dangerous players in Connor Ruiz, Pablo Mateo Faz. And I think probably one of their most important players has got to be their wing back, Declan Wynn. He has 6 assists and seems to be involved in a lot of their goal scoring opportunities. This is a game where everybody's definitely going to have to show up and support this team. Detroit is a team that has pulled off some really good results in the past, and they're outperforming expectations this season. This is a team that has a lot of confidence, and we're the second place team in the East, but they're coming into this game fully expecting to challenge for a win. So we hope to see a good crowd there, and I'm excited to see this game, James.
Yes, yeah, I am going to finally get to go attend a game in person again after several weeks out, and it just feels right that it's going to be against a team like Detroit City, who probably, I'm assuming, are going to have some traveling fans. They are known for having, like you said, a very good fan base, a very vocal fan base, maybe a very controversial fan base at times, but I do want to make sure that everybody who can get out there does, because if they do have a fan base that shows up to this game, then we're going to want to drown them out for sound. And we are going to want to make sure that there's no doubt who the home team is here, who has the best support in this league, let's go ahead and say. And I want to make sure that we can cheer the boys on to a very good victory and a very important victory against somebody who can definitely cause us some problems. So let's move into our predicts for this game against Detroit City. And Carlos, do you want to go first?
Yes. I've been struggling to think about this game because I don't know. I've been back and forth between like a 3-1 or a 3-0 or a 2-1. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm feeling like we can blow them out because we're scoring a lot of goals. But on the other hand, like we've said, Detroit is a really good team and they can score some goals of their own. But I think this could be a high scoring affair. So I'm going to take a 3-2 result.
3-2.
I think Detroit has a couple goals in them. But I think, like I said, our back line has had those moments of lapses of judgment. But we're also scoring a bunch of goals. So I'm confident that we can get the win here. But I'm going to take a kind of a wacky result here and give Detroit 2 goals against us.
Yeah, I was also wondering whether or not this could be a game that gets away from us in that sense. But in the end, I do think that we get a win here. I think that possibly, one of these games we can't win for the rest of the season, almost certainly. It would be great, but I don't think that we can do it quite the way that everybody would like to. I think, though, this game is not going to be one where we slip up. I think we do get a win here. I'm going to take the opposite track from you if you're going high scoring, and I'm going to say we pull out a 1-0 win. Nice.
Also very reasonable. I could see that coming. And honestly, I would prefer a 1-0 win over a 3-2 win. I really, really want to see this defense start to click. Maybe a little bit more of a boring game versus a 3-2 game, but personally, I prefer to see that. So I hope you're right, James.
Yeah, I certainly would not mind a shutout. That would do, I think, everybody a world of good in the confidence factor. So now we will move away from that and into our extra time segment, our beautifully named extra time segment. And there are some further congratulations to hand out this week after just a whole bunch of stuff from last weekend where we were talking about who qualified for the Women's World Cup and all sorts of stuff. Let's get into what happened this past weekend. The Community Shield, which is always the precursor to the English Premier League, somehow that took place this past weekend. I don't know how, Carlos, but our whole summer has come and gone before our eyes, and we are nearly at the Premier League season starting again. The Premier League is the most popular league on the planet. It also coincides roughly with the start of the other of the top 5 leagues in France, Italy, Spain, and Germany. I believe Germany's second division has already started. They're already going. The Netherlands should be going soon. Scotland has started this weekend. It's nuts. I don't know how we've got here, but congratulations to Liverpool beating Man City in the Community Shield and getting us ready for yet another season. Carlos, what happened here? How did this already happen in one weekend?
I have no clue. This totally slipped under my radar, to be honest. Like, there was a lot of soccer going on, and something that I spent a lot of time watching has been the women's Copa America and the women's Euros. They've just been really, really good time to watch. Fortunately, Ecuador did not have the best of performances and were knocked out pretty early on in the group stage. So unfortunate, but apart from that, just a great couple weeks of soccer and a great weekend of soccer, specifically this past weekend. But like you said, the summer has come and gone, James. I was talking to you earlier about this, but my next semester of college is starting up soon, and August 1st came now today, and a bunch of work hit my inbox and a lot of stuff to do. It's the Premier League starting to roll around is always a sign of the new academic year starting for me. So I'm excited, obviously for the school year, but even more excited for, some more soccer to be on my TV.
Yeah. That's the good way to look at it, actually. We sickos out here can never get enough, I guess.
Yep.
But with that starting, that does mean that a couple tournaments did come to a close this past weekend. England beat Germany in the Women's Euro, and Brazil beat Colombia in the Copa America Femenina. There were some other women's tournaments going on that we didn't cover probably as much, but South Africa beat Morocco in the Women's Africa Cup of Nations. So congratulations to them. It was their first ever. And Papua New Guinea, a team that you probably don't hear a lot about, but they won the Women's Oceania Football Championship to possibly go on and qualify for the World Cup. Usually New Zealand takes that spot, but they are hosting the next Women's World Cup, so it offers a chance to one team that has probably never qualified and will probably get another better chance than this. I would like to see Papua New Guinea just for, the sake of growing the game of soccer, but we shall have to see how it plays out and whom they draw in the intercontinental playoffs. Now, moving on to another game on the women's side, congrats go out as well to both South Georgia Tormenta women's team, who won the USLW League, the inaugural W League season, and Minnesota Aurora, who hosted the game in front of 6,500 fans out in, I believe, Minneapolis. I mean, Carlos, that's incredible. There is, as we've seen in the past 2 months, a huge appetite for women's soccer, and it extends even to, college players who are in their off season. I'm absolutely floored by this.
No, it was a great game too. I mean, apart from, the crowd and the atmosphere at that really cool stadium over there in Minneapolis, it was a great game. And the name is slipping my mind right now, but I know USF's women's soccer program even had some representation in that game. I believe it was the South Georgia Tormenta goalie. And it's so embarrassing that I'm forgetting her name right now because she had like the save of the game. She saved a penalty. So while you talk next, when I'm done here, I'm going to look up her name because I want to give her a shout out because it was incredible. But yeah, I mean, like you said, women's soccer there's an appetite for it here. Even in the USLW League, which is like you said, it's essentially a collegiate summer league. 6,500 people in the final is more than a lot of NWSL teams. So it's just really cool to see that happening. And I think this is paving paving the path here for, our beloved Rowdies locally to end up with a women's team, probably in this USLW league, but it's U.S. soccer. Everything gets shaken up all the time. We never know when there's a new league coming around.
Exactly.
But there, like you said, there is an appetite, and I'm hoping to see a women's team in our community here. Someday,
cool.
real soon.
It would be cool. But yeah, so that's awesome. And we, as you said, hopefully it inspires some maybe Tampa Bay Rays owners to think about what they could do in that space. But one final congratulations has to go out, and this is related to the USL Championship. Sacramento Republic won their U.S. Open Cup semifinal against Sporting Kansas City. It was 0-0 going all the way through the first 90 minutes and then extra time, and they won on penalties. They are now playing in the final against, who else was it going to be but Orlando City. So everyone listening to our podcast, I'm going to have to ask you whether you are in Tampa Bay, if you are outside of Tampa Bay, maybe you are in another country, on another continent. I do not care. You cannot support Orlando City in this game. You simply cannot. If you are an RBLR sports listener, you have to support Sacramento Republic. This is not only USL Championship solidarity, but it is because Orlando City knocked us out, which we all know from earlier in this season, listening to that bad episode that we had to do. But Sac Republic, everybody, we got to support them in this one. I believe the game is early September, and as we get closer, we will follow up on that. But yes. It's all on them to take home now.
No, but even apart from, I guess one can say, my dislike for Orlando City, Sacramento Republic being in the final, just independent of the opponent, is really incredible. And I've said this on Twitter before. I think it's a huge testament to the quality of the USL Championship, obviously. And I think it's even more of a testament because Sacramento is, no disrespect to them, it's kind of a random team to make it to the final.
It is.
This is a mid-table team in the Western Conference, and they're starting to play better now. Obviously, with this momentum of the Open Cup, they had a great result in Charleston this past weekend. But, I mean, this is kind of proof that any team in the USL Championship, from like first to like eighth place in either conference, any given year has a chance of making this sort of run. And for it to be Sacramento is great. I mean, good for them. They have a great atmosphere, and they had a great atmosphere in that last game. It was really cool to see that live on TV and into the early hours of the morning over here at like 12:30 a.m. I feel like was when it ended. It was a great game, and I'm super happy for them, but I think I'm even happier for the league as a whole here, for the USL Championship. I mean, it's, like I said, it's a huge testament to where the league is. And any USL team making it that far is a point of pride for any and all USL teams.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly the way to put it. So we will leave it there for extra time. We will bring it to a close and blow the final whistle on this. The last thing that I want to say is I did put out an article today that is published on the RBLR Sports website, and you can find it on Twitter. I believe that RBLR put it out there, and then I retweeted it. Eureka, our producer, has retweeted it as well. If you needed any other direction to find it, please let us know. But go check it out. I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm just wondering, based on the way the season has gone, is there maybe a subscription box that the Rowdies have signed up for? I'm not too sure. So we will also have a link in the description if you would like to check that out. Do not miss it, and let me know what you think. But that will do it for us this week. Thank you, listeners.
James, hold on. Let me interrupt you really quickly. Very important. We did some research, and by we, I mean Eureka in the background did some research here. Sydney Martinez is the name of the South Georgia Tormenta goalie. USF legend now. Are you kidding me? Yeah, she made that save in extra time against Minnesota. It was a penalty stop, which kept the game level, and obviously Tormenta would go on and win that. So congrats to Tormenta again, but huge congrats especially to Sydney Martinez and the USF Bulls program as a whole. I'm sure she's a huge point of pride now.
I would only hope so, based on her heroics in that game. But yeah, that now will do it. We have done everything that we talked about and more in this episode. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in and keeping with us all this long. You can follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. You can also get at me on Twitter. I am at RBLR James K. Carlos, what about you?
I am on Twitter at Carlos TPA10. It's a great place to follow. I mean, I talk about just the most random things on my Twitter. I just retweeted the Cassian Andor series trailer for any Star Wars nerds out there. I'm so excited for that. But I also tweet out bad memes, like a picture of a dog in an X-ray and said Lewis Hilton has that dog in him. So come over, drop a follow, and I will tweet about literally anything and everything. And like James has said in the past, with any questions, definitely hashtag ask RBLR. Shoot any DMs, any questions you have for the upcoming episodes. James and I would love to answer them.
Yeah, we love doing that. It is awesome to be able to interact with people because that is why we do a podcast, obviously. So please like and subscribe to that podcast. You can do so on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube and all other major podcast platforms. If you want to hear us somewhere, we are there. And with that, we will now bring it to a close and say, for a home game coming up this week against Detroit City, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.